As we all know, the number one pick in the 2021 NBA draft belongs to the Detroit Pistons. Now, with that being said, this is a very deep draft class, but the two prized players are no doubt Cade Cunningham and Jalen Green. So it's been reported that there is 4 teams out there that are putting together heavy trade offers for the Pistons to look at to try to be able to trade up in the draft and draft one of the young superstars of the NBA. Yo, what's going on, guys? Crispy Flakes here. So it's been reported today that there is 4 teams that are heavily interested in putting together a trade package with the Detroit Pistons to trade for the number 1 pick in the 2021 NBA draft. So before we get going in today's video, man, if you guys don't mind dropping a like and of course subscribing if you're new to the channel, because, well, McDonald's just came out with a new Space Jam Happy Meal, and I really want to try it out, man. So, leave that like, help with the algorithm so I can afford the Space Jam. And I'm not talking about just like that, like the 4-piece chicken nugget, man. I want the 6-piece. I want to splurge, bro. So yes, thank you guys so much for the support here on this channel. But okay, so the 4 teams that are interested in putting together a trade package, these are all teams that are either like in a rebuild or maybe like 1 piece away. We got the Pelicans are really interested, teaming up with Zion Williamson, Cade Cunningham. We got the Cleveland Cavaliers, who of course have the 3rd pick in the draft. We got the Houston Rockets, who have the 2nd pick in the draft, and we have the OKC Thunder, who have, pretty much every damn draft pick in existence, right, guys? Those are the 4 teams interested. What we are going to do for today's video is talk about, why Detroit would do a trade with any of these teams. And I asked you guys over on my Twitter account at CrispyFlakes2K to put together your realistic trade packages. So I selected 2 for each team that I am going to, talk about. And at the same time, I want to give you guys my thoughts and opinions. Now, it is important to note that it was actually released this morning, I believe by a Bleacher Report, saying that Cade Cunningham is actually extremely excited to play for the Detroit Pistons. I know, man, the haters will let you know otherwise, but Cade Cunningham actually wants to play in Detroit. And I actually, said, why are people not talking about this? Because people like to throw shade at the Pistons and stuff like that, man. And somebody was like, well, what else would he say? I mean, he has the option to not say anything at all, or he has the option to pull the Eli Manning and say, hey, I don't want to play here, man. So I do think Cade's excited to be here. And for that reason, man, I really want to get him. But I would also be cool with Jalen Green. So here we go. The first team we are going to start with is the Pelicans. So, of course, the Pelicans have the big time core of Zion Williamson, Brandon Ingram. It remains to be seen if they are going to, re-sign Lonzo Ball or not. But they got a really nice young core. They got some nice pieces out there. They have, I believe, the 10th pick in the draft. So the reason the Detroit Pistons would even consider doing this trade is because, for one, it is a pretty deep draft class. But at the same time, if the Pistons could get their hands on one of those young players, especially maybe like a Brandon Ingram, who I believe just signed a 5-year extension and was most improved player, 2 seasons ago, then that would be a reason to do it. But the first trade we have is by Michael, and Michael said the Pelicans will send Brandon Ingram and the pick this year and the Lakers pick from next year, man, which of course that was part of the Anthony Davis trade. So yeah, again, the 10th pick in the draft. I mean, it's pretty damn deep. So, the Pistons would still get a really good player. Then, of course, Brandon Ingram could be that number 1 go-to scoring option that they really, really need. But at the same time, they have Sadiq Bey, they have Jeremy Grant, so I don't know if really bringing another forward to this team is on the top of the priority list. So yeah, that trade, I mean, I like Ingram a lot. I just don't know if I'm doing it. Next up, we have Killick Rung, who says Ingram, Lonzo, which would be via a sign and trade, the 10th pick, and 2 future first-round picks, man. So obviously in this case, you get Lonzo Ball, who knows how to play with another point guard, that being Eric Bledsoe. So you get Lonzo and Killian Hayes together, which I honestly don't really like all that much because they're both like primary ball handler type of guys. Ingram, we talked about him. Draft, we talked about him. But also, again, 2 future first-round picks. I mean, by doing this trade, Cade Cunningham, Zion Williamson, that's going to pretty much guarantee that this is going to be a contending team in a few seasons. So those picks aren't going to be extremely valuable. But nonetheless, it's not a bad trade, if the Pistons want to get the best bang for their buck with the first pick in the draft. Next up, we have the Houston Rockets. So why exactly would the Rockets and the Pistons do a trade if the Rockets are picking second after them? Well, for the Rockets case, they do this because maybe they don't want to wait until draft night to see what the Detroit Pistons do. Obviously, there's rumors that the Pistons are also pretty high on Jalen Green. So by doing this, they solidify their future. They get their guy no matter what, have that be Cade or Jalen. But also, the Detroit Pistons would do this maybe because they are just okay with getting either one of those guys. Like, maybe they don't have a preference, and by this, they trade down a little bit, get another good young player out of it, maybe some draft picks. from the Houston Rockets. So the first trade is by the Twitter account IDK Words that said that the trade they could do is basically all the Rockets' first round picks. So this would be the number 2 pick in the draft, the number 23 pick in the draft, and the number 24 pick in the draft. So by doing this, the Pistons, they get Jalen or Cade out of it no matter what, but also they get to pick some guys later on. So it's a pretty deep draft class, but there's also a lot of projects out there too. So maybe the Pistons get somebody they throw in the G League for a few seasons and incorporate them into the rebuild later on, or maybe they can even trade those picks later on, whatever really needs to be done. So yeah, just a few additional trade assets or draft picks for the Pistons would be kind of nice. The next trade is by John, and John said John Wall, Kevin Porter Jr., and the second pick in the draft for the Pistons' first pick and a future first round pick right here, man. So to be quite honest, I don't know how I feel about the future first pick. Maybe if it was like top 10 protector or something like that, I would be considerate because, obviously in this trade, the Pistons are taking on John Wall's contract. And there's something to be said about that, especially a team like Detroit that typically buys out those veteran contracts because, well, the guys don't really want to play there or go through a rebuild, right? So what I do like about this trade, the second round pick's nice and everything. But the big get for me here is Kevin Porter Jr. So originally, Kevin Porter Jr., I believe, was the 30th pick in the draft like 2 years ago. The Pistons actually had that pick, but they traded away or something like that. So they essentially could have actually gotten Kevin Porter Jr. But yeah, that gives us our starting shooting guard for the next, 5, 6, 7 years, whatever, with Killian Hayes. We get that second pick. At that point, though, it gets a little confusing because if you go for Jalen Green, then obviously how does he fit with Kevin Porter? I also think that's kind of the Houston Rockets' problem right now. But also John Wall, I would be okay with him, mentoring Killian Hayes for a little bit. I actually feel like that would be a nice little, relationship they could form right there, and you could showcase John Wall for a little bit. Him with, Kevin Porter, Sadiq Bey, Jeremy Grant, Isaiah Stewart could actually be a pretty solid starting five to start things off. We still get the top draft pick there, so now, it's no longer like a case of like Blake Griffin and Derrick Rose where it's like, we don't really want to play these guys, we want to trade them away or buy them out because they're going to help us win games. To get to that 8th seed, we're never really going to be able to go on a full-on rebuild, right? Well, in this case, we already have the draft picks, so you can be a little competitive with having John Wall out there. And by the trade deadline, if he's playing good, you trade him away, essentially, right, man? So, yeah, not a bad little trade, man. I definitely did not mind that one. And the next team we have is the OKC Thunder. So Detroit would do this because, like I said, the OKC Thunder have a ton of draft picks. And, yeah, you just go for as many of those as you can, right, man? Like, toss on 10 first rounders, and we'll be good to go. We'll do the trade. But also at the same time, too, with the OKC Thunder being really the beginning of a rebuild, some of those draft picks the Pistons could trade for could be top 5 picks, for the next few seasons, right? So, yeah, it's a little bit of a risk because they trade, let's say the Thunder draft Cade, and you have him out there with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and also, like, Dort. I mean, that's not, like, a bad little trio to start things off. You can really see the potential of that team, so that's the risk you take on with that. The next trade we have, I guess we didn't really talk about trades, did we? No, we have Luke Walker with the first trade saying the number 6 picks, number 16 picks, number 18 picks. So, yeah, we get draft picks out of it like we just kind of talked about. Not too much to say about that. That number 6 pick, you're probably looking at maybe like a Davion Mitchell or maybe a Moses Moody, I guess, could be there. Keon Johnson, somebody like that could be pretty solid for the Pistons rotation. The next trade we have is by the Twitter account called Thunder Rebuild. And he says OKC gives up 2 first-round picks. The number, future first-round picks, I guess that would be. The number 6 pick, Poku Krzyzewski, I think is how you say his name, and Darius Bazley. So Darius Bazley, I don't know too much about him, but I think he's just like a solid scorer and stuff like that at the 4th spot for the OKC Thunder. But Pokusevski, that kid intrigues me. He had some really nice moments. Really just moments you're like, oh my God, this kid could be a superstar in the future for the OKC Thunder. So I was a little intrigued by that. Could definitely get maybe behind that type of trade, assuming there's more draft picks involved and stuff like that. And of course, somebody decent be on number 6, which there definitely will be. But like I said, the Pistons need guards. They really need a shooting guard. That's really the spot they need. So, yeah. And the final team we are going to be talking about here is the Cleveland Cavaliers, who have the number 3 pick in the draft. And really the only way I would say the Pistons do a trade in this case is if they are really, really sold on either Evan Mobley or Jalen Suggs, one of those guys that could go 3 or 4. Because, at that point, you really got to want one of those guys, right? Because I do think that Jalen and Cade are the number 1, number 2, no matter what. So it's not really a case where you think maybe Jalen's going to fall that far. I just don't really see that happening, right? So the first trade we have here is by Crushable. Shout out to him, man. He's a YouTuber that does a lot of rebuilds and stuff like that. He says the Cavaliers send Sexton and the third pick for the first pick. Me personally speaking, if the Pistons are like really sold on Evan Mobley in this case, it's not a bad trade, man. You know, Colin Sexton was like a 25-point per game scorer last season. Still extremely young. I love him at the 2 spot, especially alongside Killian Hayes, because Killian definitely is more of a playmaker, and Colin Sexton's a bucket getter, so that could be a nice little backcourt right there. I actually really like this trade here, man. Get Evan Mobley, and yeah, you got a pretty damn solid team. The next trade we have is going to be a 3-team trade by Phenomenal Bopper. He says the Cavs get the first pick, Mason Plumlee and Rajon Rondo. It's a 3-team trade. The Pistons get the third pick, Zubac and Sexton, and then the Clippers get Kevin Love and Detroit's 2023 second-round pick. So by doing this, you know, the Clippers, they take on a veteran, Kevin Love, to help kind of bolster up their roster. Pistons, we talked about the third pick and getting Colin Sexton, but also Zubac, good young center. You know, it would be nice just having like a 7-footer out there. I see you probably start Isaiah Stewart at that point, but still a pretty solid rotation at the center position. And for the Cavs to get that first pick, and Mason Plumlee is pretty solid, and then Rondo probably gets bought out, right, man? So those are the 4 teams. Those are the 4 trades we are talking about. Which one do you guys like the most? Let me know in the comment section below. As far as what I would do personally, I mean, I would say the trade that I probably like the best is something involving Kevin Porter with the Rockets, because we're still going to get a top guy no matter what, so I like that. I don't know if I necessarily like taking on John Wall's contract, but I understand it at the same time, too. You know, going for number 1, number 2 in this draft class is really not that big a deal, because I do think both the guys, being Jalen and Cade, are going to be superstar players. So, yeah, I would probably say that's the one I like the most, but realistically speaking, I'm really cool with just drafting Cade Cunningham, man. You know, especially if he wants to play in Detroit. You rarely get guys like that absolutely want to take on that Detroit role. And I really do think he could be a future generational, just like top point guard for the Detroit Pistons. So that's all we have for today's video. Hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Be sure to drop that like, subscribe if you're new to the channel, so I can afford that Space Jam Happy Meal. And peace out, my friends.